The good days were worse than the bad days because the good days made you forget me. You question whether the bad days had really happened at all made. You think maybe you were exaggerating, maybe it wasn't that serious. Maybe you could fix it if you just tried harder. That's the trap. That's the design. They don't abuse you every day because if they did, you'd leave. The inconsistency is the cage. By the time I understood the pattern, by the time I could see it clearly, I had spent 3 years cycling between hope and terror. Between this is the man I love, and I need to escape before he kills me. The unpredictability wasn't chaos. It was strategy. It was control disguised as complexity, and I fell for it completely. It happened on a Thursday. I was looking at the calendar on my phone, scrolling back through months, trying to find a pattern in the good days and bad days. And that's when I saw it. The good days always came right after I'd started planning to leave, right after I'd begun to pull away. That's when I understood the kindness wasn't love, it was reset. It was a systematic way to keep me trapped. My name is Rachel, I'm 32 years old, and it took me 3 years to understand that inconsistent abuse is still abuse. That the good days don't cancel out the bad days, they enable them. They make them survivable, they make you stay. This isn't about constant violence. Everyone leaves constant violence eventually. Your body won't let you stay. Your survival instinct kicks in. This is about something far more effective. The cycle, the pattern, the unpredictable rotation between love and cruelty that keeps you constantly off balance, constantly hoping, constantly staying. If you've ever said he's not abusive all the time, if you ever explained that he can be really loving sometimes, if you found yourself defending him by listing the good days, comment cycle one word, because what I'm about to describe is the most effective trap in abusive relationships. And it's holding someone right now, maybe you. I met him when I was 27 years old, fresh out of a long relationship that had ended amicably, still figuring out what I wanted, who I wanted to become. He was 31, successful and tech charming when he wanted to be reserved, when he didn't. We met at a friend's engagement party, outdoor venue, string lights, late summer. He was standing by the bar, not really talking to anyone, just observing, confident without being arrogant, funny without trying too hard, attentive without being overwhelming. That first night, he seemed perfectly balanced, perfectly safe. We started dating 2 weeks after that party. He'd gotten my number from the mutual friend, texted me. A few days later, with something clever about the wedding industrial complex, we met for coffee. Talked for 3 hours, discovered we both loved the same. Obscure podcasts, same type of dry humor, same taste in food. It felt easy, natural, like we'd known each other longer than we had. The first month was incredible. He was affectionate, thoughtful, consistent, present. Called when he said he would, showed up when he promised, remembered small details I'd mentioned in passing, brought me coffee in the morning exactly how I liked it, texted throughout the day with random thoughts, made plans for weekends weeks in advance, introduced me to his friends enthusiastically, met my family and charmed them effortlessly. Everything felt stable, solid, real, like I'd finally found someone emotionally mature, someone who had his life together, someone safe. Everyone who met him during that first month said the same thing. He's great. He's different from the guys you usually date. This one's going to last. My best friend said, don't screw this up. My mother said, he's the kind of man you marry. My sister said, if you don't want him, I'll take him. I believed them. I believed him. I believed in us. I thought I'd finally figured out how to choose well, how to recognize a good partner when I saw one. The first signal came 6 weeks in. We'd been perfect until then, completely consistent, easy, comfortable. Then one Saturday morning, I woke up to complete silence. The apartment felt different, cold. He was sitting on the couch, staring at nothing, not his phone, not the TV, just staring at the wall. I asked what was wrong. No response. I asked again. He looked at me like I was a stranger, like he'd never seen me before, like I'd interrupted something private. I don't want to talk right now. I need space. Leave me alone. I gave him space, confused, but not alarmed. Everyone has bad days. Everyone needs space sometimes. Mental health is important. I'm a good partner. I understand boundaries. I went to the gym. Came back 2 hours later thinking he'd have processed whatever was bothering him, ready to talk. But he was in the exact same position on the couch. Hadn't moved. Hadn't showered. Hadn't eaten. I tried again. Are you okay? Can I do anything? Do you want to talk about what's wrong? I said, leave me alone. Why can't you just listen? Why do you always have to push? Why do you always make everything about you? Always, we'd been dating 6 weeks, and he said always, like we had years of history, like I had a pattern of behavior he was responding to. I backed off immediately, stayed quiet, stayed out of his way. The silence lasted all day, all night. He slept on the couch, wouldn't look at me, wouldn't speak. Sunday morning I woke up and he was different again. Completely different. Back to normal, like a switch had flipped. Made breakfast, pancakes and coffee, kissed my forehead, asked about my week ahead, what meetings I had, whether I wanted to do something fun next weekend, like nothing had happened, like the previous 24 hours hadn't occurred. I was so relieved I didn't question it, didn't bring up Saturday, didn't ask what had been wrong, didn't want to risk triggering another shutdown, just accepted the return to normal, accepted that sometimes people have bad days, and the best thing you can do is give them space and not take it personally. That was signal one, the first hint of the pattern, the first indication that something was systematically wrong. But I didn't recognize it as a signal because it was surrounded by weeks of consistency, by so much good that one bad day seemed like nothing. It seemed like an anomaly, seemed like something I could ignore. The second signal came 3 weeks later. We were at dinner with my friends, a group of 4 couples at a nice restaurant downtown. He'd been charming all evening, making everyone laugh, telling stories, being attentive to me. Perfect boyfriend performance, the kind of night where everyone goes home talking about what a great couple you are. Then somewhere between appetizers and entrees, my friend mentioned a guy I'd dated briefly 2 years before him, just a passing reference, a story about a party we'd all attended, barely relevant, and I watched. His face change, watched something shift behind his eyes, a hardness, a coldness. We finished dinner, said goodbyes, got in the car. The silence was immediate, thick. I could feel it building, but didn't know what I'd done. We got home, and he exploded. Why didn't you tell me about him? About who? About the guy your friend mentioned? I did tell you. I told you about everyone I dated before you. You mentioned him once in passing. You said you dated someone named Matt. You didn't tell me you were serious. You didn't tell me it lasted 6 months. You didn't tell me your friends all knew him. We weren't serious. It was 2 months, not 6. It was 2 years ago. It's completely irrelevant. You're lying. You're minimizing. You do this. You hide things from me. You make me look like an idiot in front of your friends. I don't hide things. I told you about him. I've told you about everyone. You're a liar. You lie about everything. I can't trust anything you say. How am I supposed to trust you if you can't even be honest about your past? He raged for over an hour, pacing, accusing me of things that hadn't happened, twisting my words, rewriting history. I tried to defend myself, tried to explain, tried to show him old texts proving I'd told him about Matt. He wouldn't hear it, wouldn't listen, wouldn't look at the evidence, just kept saying I was lying, I was hiding things. I was making him look stupid. Finally, he stormed out, slammed the door so hard the frame cracked. I sat on the floor crying, completely confused, terrified. Sure, the relationship was over. Sure, I'd done something unforgivable, even though I couldn't figure out what. He came back 2 hours later with flowers, expensive ones, the kind you get from a real florist, not a grocery store. I'm sorry, I completely overreacted. That was unfair to you. I have serious trust issues from my ex. She cheated on me for months, lied about it, constantly gaslit me when I asked questions. When your friend mentioned that guy tonight, it triggered me, brought back all that trauma. I know that's not fair to you. I know you're not her. I'm working on it. I'm in therapy. I promise I'll get better at this. Please forgive me. I forgave him immediately. So grateful the storm had passed. So relieved he'd come back. So understanding of his trauma. So ready to support him through his healing process. Of course I forgive you. Of course I understand. Trauma is real. Triggers are real. I'm here for you. We'll work through this together. That was signal to the explosion, followed by flowers, an apology, and explanation that made it my job to understand his trauma too. Manage his triggers to prevent future explosions by being more careful about what I said, who I mentioned, what information. I shared the responsibility for his reaction became mine to manage. The third signal was the makeup period. After the explosion and apology came 3 weeks of absolute perfect. He was extra attentive, extra loving, extra present, took me on dates to expensive restaurants, surprised me with small thoughtful gifts, sent flowers to my office, texted me throughout the day telling me how much he loved me, how lucky he was to have me, how I was the best thing that had ever happened to him, told me. He loved me for the first time one night after dinner, standing in my kitchen, holding my face in his hands. I love you. I've never felt this way about anyone. You're everything to me. Those 3 weeks were better than the first month, more intense, more romantic, more connected. I felt special, chosen, like our relationship was stronger for having survived conflict. Like we'd been tested and passed, like his vulnerability and apology proved how much he loved me, how committed he was, how safe I was with him. I didn't notice I was being trained. Didn't notice that the cycle was teaching me that staying through bad days led to better good days, that enduring abuse earned love, that my tolerance for mistreatment was being systematically expanded. Didn't notice that I was learning to accept explosions as the price of intimacy, that I was learning to manage his emotions as my primary job, that I was learning to make myself smaller to keep him comfortable. If you're keeping score of good days versus bad days, if you're telling yourself the good outweighs the bad, if you're calculating ratios, and percentages part 5 is pinned in the comments, it explains why that math is designed to trap you, why the ratio is irrelevant, why you can't average out abuse. You need to see the full mechanism before you can escape it. The pattern established itself over the next year, became predictable in retrospect though, never in the moment. 3 to 4 weeks of good, sometimes 5 if I was especially careful, then 1 day of bad, sometimes 2, never longer than 3 days at a time. The bad days were unpredictable from my perspective. I couldn't identify triggers, couldn't prevent them, couldn't see them coming. They just appeared like sudden storms, destroyed everything. Temporarily, then cleared completely, leaving me confused about whether they'd even happened. During bad days, he was cruel in ways designed to hurt maximum, said things he knew would land. You're not that attractive, honestly. I could do better. I settled for you. Because I was tired of being alone, you're lucky I stay. No one else would put up with your issues, your anxiety, your neediness. Your family thinks you're a disappointment. I hear the way they talk about you when you're not around. Your friends talk about you behind your back too. They tell me things. They don't respect you the way you think they do. During bad days, he was cold, wouldn't look at me, wouldn't touch me, wouldn't acknowledge my presence in the room. I'd walk into the kitchen and he'd walk out. I'd try to talk and he'd put in headphones. I'd reach for him and he'd pull away like I was contaminated. Like touching me was physically repulsive. The rejection was complete, total. I became invisible in my own home, a ghost haunting spaces I paid rent for. During bad days, he was angry, volatile, unpredictable, slammed doors hard enough to crack frames, threw things across rooms, punched walls, leaving holes I'd have to explain to the landlord. Never me, he never hit me, always near me. Close enough to terrify without technically hitting, close enough to make the threat clear without leaving evidence, close enough that I'd flinch, freeze, prepare for impact that never came. The anticipation was almost worse than if he'd just hit me. At least then I'd know. At least then I'd have proof. At least then people would believe me. Then the bad days would end always, suddenly, never gradually. I'd go to bed with him silent and cold, and wake up to him making breakfast, singing Smiling Back to Good like a switch had flipped apologetic. Sometimes, I'm sorry about yesterday, I was stressed about work, I shouldn't have taken it out on you. Other times acting like nothing had happened at all. Expecting me to match his shift immediately to move on without processing, to not mention what had just occurred to. Pretend the previous days had been normal. And I learned to match him, learned to shift with him, learned to accept the return to good without asking questions that might trigger another bad day. Learn to be grateful for the return to normal. Learn to not bring up what had happened. Learn to take responsibility for managing the transition, for making it smooth, for not dwelling, for moving on, for being mature, for being understanding, for being a good partner. The good days after bad days were always better than regular good days. He was more affectionate, more attentive, more loving, more generous. Like he was making up for the storm, proving he could be good, reminding me why I stayed, reminding me what I had. Those days were addictive. I craved them, worked for them, tried to earn them by being better, less triggering, more understanding, more careful, more accommodating, more flexible, more patient. I became obsessed with preventing bad days, studied his moods constantly, monitored his stress levels, managed his environment, walked on eggshells continuously, tried to predict and prevent triggers I couldn't identify because they didn't exist. The bad days weren't triggered by anything I did. They were scheduled. They were part of the system. But I didn't know that yet. I thought if I could just be good enough, careful enough, understanding enough, supportive enough, the bad days would stop. We'd break the cycle. We'd move into permanent good. They never stopped. The cycle was fixed. Built into the relationship like architecture, 3 weeks good, 1 week bad. Like clockwork that I couldn't see because I was too close. Too desperate to believe the good days were real, and the bad days were anomalies I could eliminate through better behavior. By the second year, I had stopped talking about the bad days to anyone, stopped mentioning the explosions, the cruelty, the silent treatments, the holes in the walls, because explaining it made me sound crazy, made me sound like I was exaggerating, made me sound weak. He's not abusive all the time. Mostly he's great. He's wonderful, actually. It's just sometimes he gets stressed and shuts down. It's just sometimes he says things he doesn't mean. It's just sometimes his trauma gets triggered. When I said it out loud, it sounded manageable, fixable, like normal relationship problems everyone has, like something therapy could solve, like something love could heal. My friends saw only good days. I made sure of that. Declined invitations during bad days, only socialized during good phases. Family events always fell on good days somehow. I learned to predict the cycle well enough to schedule around it. Social media showed only good days. Cute couple photos, dinner dates, weekend trips. The bad days were private, invisible, easy to minimize. Easy to forget during the subsequent good period. Easy to rewrite as not that bad. Easy to convince myself I was overreacting, being dramatic, being ungrateful for a good man who loved me despite my flaws. I started keeping a calendar in the notes app on my phone, marking good days and bad days with different colored dots, trying to find the pattern I was sure existed: green for good, red for bad, yellow for neutral days where nothing particularly good or bad happened, just existing, just going through motions. Looking back at months of data, I could see it clearly. The cycle, the rhythm, 3 weeks green, 1 week red, consistent, predictable, mechanical, mathematical. But I still didn't understand what I was seeing. Still thought the pattern meant something I could decode, some trigger I could identify and eliminate, some behavior I could change, some flaw in myself I could fix. Didn't understand that the pattern itself was the abuse, that the inconsistency was the cage, that the good days existed only to make the bad days survivable, that the unpredictability was the point, that I was being systematically trained to accept explosions as normal, to crave relief as love, to confuse instability with passion. It was a Thursday afternoon in the third year, early fall, leaves changing. I was sitting in a coffee shop during my lunch break, looking at my calendar again, scrolling back through months of color-coded data. 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, 30 months. The pattern was identical across all of it. Perfect 3-to-1 ratio, never varying, never improving, never getting worse, just consistent. And that's when something clicked in my mind, when I understood what I was actually seeing. This wasn't random, this wasn't stress related. This was untriggered by my behavior or external circumstances or his trauma or work pressure or anything I'd been telling myself. This was a system, a deliberate cycle, a pattern he was maintaining. The good days weren't relief from abuse. They were part of the abuse. They were the mechanism that made staying possible. They were the reason I couldn't leave. The inconsistency wasn't a bug in the relationship. It was the feature. It was the entire point. I realized sitting in that coffee shop, staring at 30 months of data, that he wasn't abusive despite the good. Days he was abusive, because of them, the good days were the trap, the lure, the reason. I stayed through the bad days, the hope that maybe this time the good days would last forever. Maybe this time he'd changed. Maybe this time we'd move past the cycle into permanent stability. The good days were what made the bad days survivable, what made me stay, what made me try, what made me believe. That recognition, that moment of absolute clarity, sitting with my phone with colored dots representing years of my life. That was the beginning of the end, but it wasn't the end itself. It wasn't even close to the end. Because understanding the trap doesn't automatically free you from it. Not when you've been trained for 3 years to believe. The good days are worth the bad days, not when you've invested so much time and energy and hope. Not when you've told everyone he's wonderful. Not when leaving means admitting you were wrong. You were fooled. You stayed too long. The cycle is the most effective control mechanism in abusive relationships, because it does several things simultaneously. So many things that unpacking them all takes time, takes distance, takes perspective you don't have when you're inside at first. It keeps you constantly off balance, unable to build momentum toward leaving, because just when you're ready to go, just when you've had enough, just when you're packing bags, mentally a good day arrives and resets everything, resets your anger, resets your clarity, resets your resolve. Second, it makes you doubt your own perception, your own memory, your own experience. Was it really that bad if he's being wonderful now? Was I overreacting? Was I being too sensitive? Am I the problem? Maybe I triggered him. Maybe I need to be more understanding. The good days make you question the bad days, make you rewrite them, minimize them, explain them away. Third, it isolates you because explaining the cycle to others makes you sound unstable, indecisive, crazy, weak. If you tell someone he's terrible, they say leave. If you tell someone he's wonderful, they say stay. If you tell someone he's both, they look confused. They don't understand. They think you're being dramatic. They think you can't make up your mind. They stop taking you seriously. Eventually, you stop talking about it at all. Fourth, and most insidiously, it creates addiction, literal neurochemical addiction. The brain chemistry of intermittent reinforcement is identical to gambling, to slot machines, to anything that provides unpredictable rewards. Your brain becomes addicted to the pattern itself, to the hope, to the anticipation, to the relief when good days return, to the high of reconciliation. You're not addicted to him. You're addicted to the cycle, to the emotional roller coaster, to the intensity of the highs and lows. Intermittent reinforcement is the most powerful training mechanism discovered by behavioral psychology, more powerful than consistent reward, more powerful than punishment. It creates behavior that's nearly impossible to extinguish, behavior that persists long after the reinforcement stops. It's why slot machines work, why people gamble away everything, why people stay in abusive relationships for decades, why I stayed for 3 years despite knowing clearly that something was wrong. The cycle has distinct phases that repeat endlessly if you stay. Phases I learned to recognize but couldn't prevent, couldn't escape, couldn't control. Tension building is the first phase. You can feel it coming but can't stop it. The air changes, becomes heavy. His mood shifts subtly. He becomes withdrawn. Irritable, critical, you start walking on eggshells, monitoring everything you say and do, trying to prevent the inevitable explosion you know is coming. This phase can last days or weeks depending on the cycle. You're hypervigilant during this time, exhausted, anxious, waiting. The incident is the second phase, the actual abuse, the explosion, the cruelty, the violence, the silent treatment, whatever form the abuse takes in your specific relationship. This phase is usually shorter than tension building, hours or days rather than weeks, intense but temporary. This is when the actual damage happens, when things get said that can't be unsaid, when fear becomes real, when you understand clearly that you're not safe, when you think this time I'm leaving, this time is the last time. Reconciliation is the third phase, apologies, explanations, flowers, gifts, promises. This is where he's remorseful, loving, vulnerable, the person you fell in love with, the person you know is real underneath the abuse. This phase is intoxicating, addictive. It makes you forget the incident, makes you believe change is possible, makes you feel like maybe this time was the last time, maybe now he understands, maybe now he'll get help, maybe now things will be different, maybe your love is finally enough. The honeymoon is the fourth phase, the longest phase, the good days. Everything is stable, loving, normal. This is what you're trying to extend forever. What you're working toward, what you believe is the true relationship. This phase feels real, feels sustainable, feels like the truth of who he is and who you are together. It makes the incident feel like an aberration, a moment of weakness, something that happened to him, not something he chose to do to you. During this phase, you're happy. You forget why you ever thought about leaving. You feel guilty for doubting him, for not trusting him, for not believing in his love. Then the cycle starts again. Tension building, incident, reconciliation, honeymoon over and over and over, each complete cycle taking roughly the same amount of time, roughly the same pattern, the same progression. So consistent, you could set a clock by it if you were tracking it objectively from outside. But when you're inside it, when you're living it day by day, the pattern is invisible. You only see individual days, individual incidents, individual apologies, individual good periods. You don't see the system, you don't see the architecture, you don't see that it's designed, intentional, maintained. I tracked it for 2 years before I understood what I was tracking, before I realized the pattern was the point. The good days weren't breaks from abuse. They were the abuse working exactly as designed. They were the reason I couldn't leave the reason. I kept hoping the reason. I kept trying the reason. I stayed for 3 years when everyone outside the relationship could see clearly that I should go, that he was hurting me, that it wasn't going to get better, that the good days were the problem, not the solution. The decision to leave came not during a bad day, but during a good day. We were at brunch on a Sunday morning in October. Beautiful day, fall colors, outdoor seating. He was being charming, funny, affectionate, ordering mimosas, making the waiter laugh, holding my hand across the table, taking photos of us together, posting them to social media with captions about how lucky he was. Everyone around us probably thought we looked happy, perfect couple Sunday. Brunch city skyline in the background picture, perfect relationship. And I was sitting there doing math in my head. If the cycle continues, if the pattern holds the way it has for 3 years, I have maybe 2 more weeks before the next bad day, 2 weeks before the next explosion, the next cruelty, the next silent treatment, 2 weeks of walking on eggshells, waiting for the tension to build, waiting for the air to change, waiting for the inevitable incident, 2 weeks of good before 1 week of hell. And I realized sitting there with my mimosa and my perfect boyfriend and my perfect brunch that I didn't want it anymore. Didn't want 2 more weeks of good if it meant 1 week of bad. Didn't want the cycle regardless of the ratio. Didn't want to live on a timer counting down to the next incident. Didn't want to spend good days bracing for bad days. Didn't want to monitor his moods constantly. Didn't want to manage his emotions. Didn't want to walk on eggshells in my own life. I wanted stability, consistency, boring, predictable peace. Things that were completely impossible inside the cycle. Leaving during a good day is significantly harder than leaving during a bad day during bad days. Your angry hurt clearer about why you need to go, the abuse is fresh. Undeniable right in front of you, you have clarity and momentum and righteousness during good days. You're confused, guilty, questioning. Whether you're making a mistake, giving up too easily, abandoning someone who loves you just because things aren't perfect all the time. You feel like you're throwing away something good, something worth fighting for, something most people would kill to have. But I had done the math, literally done the math, sitting at that brunch table. 3 years times 52 weeks, 156 weeks total, divided by the 4-week cycle, 39 complete cycles. 39 incidents, 39 explosions, 39 silent treatments, 39 reconciliations. 39 times I convinced myself this time would be different. This time was the last time. This time he meant it when he promised to change, to get help, to be better. I left on a Tuesday afternoon, right in the middle of a good phase. Exactly 2 weeks after the last bad day, exactly 1 week before the next one was mathematically due based on 3 years of data. I took a half day from work, went home while he was still at the office, packed only what was mine, clothes, laptop, some books, left everything. Else left the furniture we'd bought together, left the kitchen stuff, left the photos on the walls, left 3 years of accumulated life. I left a note on the kitchen counter, short, clear, final. I can't do this cycle anymore. I know you, I'll be good again in a few days, but I also know what comes after that. I can't live on this timer anymore. I can't spend good days waiting for bad days. I can't spend bad days hoping for good days. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Don't contact me. I mean it. We're done. He called 47 times that first day. I know because I counted before I blocked his number. Texted over 100 times. I stopped reading them after the first 20. The messages cycled through the phases in fast forward, compressed time, anger first. You're making a huge mistake. You're going to regret this. You're throwing away the best thing you'll ever have. Then apology. I'm so sorry for whatever I did. Please tell me what I did wrong. I'll change. I'll fix it. I'll be better. Then promises. Give me one more chance, just one more. I'll get therapy. I'll do whatever it takes. I can't lose you. Then threats. You'll never find anyone like me. You're nothing without me. You'll come crawling back. Then love. I love you more than anything. You're my whole world. Please don't do this. Then hate. You're a coward. You're selfish. You're giving up. You never really loved me. Everything compressed into hours instead of weeks. The entire 4-phase cycle playing out in text messages over the course of 12 hours. It was almost funny in a horrible way, watching the pattern speed up like that. Seeing what usually took a month happen in half a day, proof that it was mechanical, systematic, programmed, not emotional, not authentic, not real, just a program running its course, just a system executing its design. I didn't respond to any of it. Blocked his number after reading those first 20 messages. Blocked him on every social media platform, blocked his email, went completely no contact. My therapist had warned me this was crucial, that any response would reset the cycle, would give him hope that he could pull me back in, would extend the process indefinitely, that the only way to truly break the pattern was to break all contact completely and permanently. The hardest part of leaving, the part I didn't expect, the part that nearly broke me, wasn't the bad days I was escaping, wasn't the abuse I was leaving behind. It was grieving the good days, mourning the loss of those perfect weeks, those honeymoon phases, those periods where everything felt right and I felt loved and chosen and special. The good days were real in their way, His love during those periods was genuine to the extent he was capable of genuine love. The person he was during honeymoon phases was someone I loved deeply, truly, completely. Leaving meant accepting I would never see that person again, never experience those good days again, never feel that intense love and attention and affection, never have those perfect Sunday brunches, never have those lazy Saturday mornings, never have those late night conversations, never have that version of him that made me feel like the most important person in the world. That was the grief, that was the loss I had to mourn, not the abuse. I wasn't sad about leaving the abuse. I was sad about leaving the relief from the abuse, the moments of peace, the illusion of safety, the fantasy of who we could be. But I also had to accept something harder, something more painful, something that took months of therapy to fully understand, that the person I loved only existed in relation to the person I feared. They weren't separate people. They weren't two sides of the same person. They were the same person using different tactics at different times for the same purpose, control, the loving partner. And the cruel partner were both him, both real, both authentic expressions of who he was. You can't keep one without accepting the other. Can't have the good days without the bad days because they're mechanically linked, structurally interdependent, designed together as one system. The good days only feel good because they're relief from the bad days, without the bad days to contrast against. The good days would just be normal days, unremarkable, nothing special. The intensity I was addicted to, the highs I craved, the connection I felt was love. Those only existed because of the lows. Remove the cycle and you remove both the pain and the relief. What's left is just stability, just consistency, just boring normal life. And that's hard to accept when you've been living in extremes for years. It's been 80 months since I left, 18 months of stable, consistent, boring days with no explosions, no silent treatments, no cruelty, no walking on eggshells, no monitoring moods, no managing emotions, no tension building, no waiting for the inevitable incident, also no intense. Highs, no dramatic reconciliations, no flowers and apologies, no addictive cycle of pain and relief, no emotional roller coaster, no passion that feels like drowning and flying simultaneously. Some days I miss it, miss the intensity, miss the highs, miss the version of him that existed during good phases, the charming, funny, attentive version, the one who made me feel special and chosen and loved in a way I'd never felt before. Then I open my calendar, look at those months of green and red dots. Remember the pattern, remember the system, remember the math. 3 weeks of good for 1 week of hell. 75% heaven, 25% hell. The ratio that seemed acceptable, even good, when I was inside it but looks completely insane from outside. 25% abuse is still abuse. 25% cruelty is still cruelty. 25% terror is still terror. You can't average it out. Cut and calculate whether a relationship is acceptable by counting good days and bad days and seeing which number is bigger. That's not how trauma works. That's not how safety works. That's not how love works. Love doesn't hurt you 1 week out of every 4 and call it acceptable because the other 3 weeks are good. Recovery from cyclical abuse is fundamentally different from recovery from consistent abuse. With consistent abuse, you're recovering from trauma, learning to process what happened, learning to trust again, learning to feel safe in the world. With cyclical abuse, you're recovering from addiction. Your brain was trained to crave the unpredictable reward, trained to hope for the next good phase, trained to believe the next cycle will be different, trained to stay through hell for the promise of heaven. Breaking that addiction requires recognizing that the good days were the problem, not the solution, that the love you're grieving was the mechanism of control, that the person you're mourning never existed as a separate entity from the person who hurt you. He was always the system. You can't extract the good and leave the bad. They're woven together, inseparable. You take all of it or none of it. I still catch myself doing the math sometimes, calculating ratios, 3 weeks versus 1 week, 21 good days versus 7 bad days, 75% versus 25%, trying to make it sound reasonable, trying to convince myself maybe I overacted, maybe it wasn't that bad, maybe I gave up too easily, maybe I should have tried harder, been more patient, more understanding, more forgiving then. I stop myself, close the calendar, remind myself that the math is designed to trap me, that you can't calculate whether abuse is acceptable by counting days and comparing numbers. Here is what I desperately wish someone had told me at 27 when I met him at that engagement party. When I was experiencing my first cycle, when I thought the bad day was an anomaly and the return to good meant everything was fine, and we moved past whatever had caused the problem. Inconsistency isn't complexity, it's control. Unpredictability isn't passion, it's strategy. If he's wonderful sometimes and cruel other times, those aren't two separate things. They're one integrated system designed to keep you trapped, designed to keep you hoping, designed to keep you trying, designed to keep you staying. They don't abuse you every day because if they did, you'd leave. Your body wouldn't let you stay. Your survival instinct would override your love, your confusion, your hope, your investment. Consistent abuse is actually easier to leave than inconsistent abuse because there's no confusion, no good days to compare against, no hope that things might improve, no reason to stay, no promise of better days ahead, no evidence that change is possible. But when abuse is intermittent, when it's surrounded by good days, when it's punctuated by apologies and flowers and promises and perfect moments, your brain can rationalize it, minimize it, explain it away, contextualize it, forgive it, forget it. The good days give you just enough relief to stay, just enough hope to endure the next bad day, just enough love to forget the last explosion, just enough evidence that he can be good to believe he will be good permanently eventually. If you're reading this right now and you're counting good days and bad days, if you're telling yourself it's not always bad, if you're explaining to friends that he's really good most of the time, if you're defending the relationship by listing all the wonderful things he does, if you're calculating ratios and percentages trying to determine if the good outweighs the bad, if you're keeping a mental or physical calendar tracking cycles, you're in the trap, you're caught. The inconsistency is the abuse, the good days are the cage, and the math will never add up to freedom, will never add up to safety, will never add up to real love. The cycle never improves on its own, never extends the good phases and eliminates the bad phases, never evolves into permanent stability. It stays remarkably consistent, same ratio, same pattern, same duration, year after year after year after year. The only variable that changes is you. You get better at anticipating the phases, better at enduring the incidents, better at recovering from the bad days, better at enjoying the good days while they last, better at convincing yourself it's normal, it's manageable, it's love. But the cycle itself never changes, never improves, never resolves. It's fixed, mechanical, deliberate, designed. Some people stay in the cycle for decades, entire lifetimes, convinced that if they just try harder, love better, understand more deeply, forgive more completely, the bad days will stop and only good days will remain. They never do. The cycle is the relationship. It's not a phase the relationship is going through. It's not something you need to survive until it gets better. It is the relationship in its entirety. Remove the cycle and there's nothing left. The good days exist only in contrast to the bad days. The love exists only as relief from the cruelty. It's all one system, one design. You can't separate it, can't extract the good parts and leave the bad parts. It's all or nothing. And choosing nothing, choosing to leave, choosing yourself, that's the only way out. My name is Rachel. I'm 32 years old. I spent 3 years cycling between heaven and hell, between love and terror, between this is forever and I need to escape, and it took me staring at a color-coded calendar for months before I understood that the inconsistency was the point. That the good days existed only to make the bad days survivable, that I wasn't crazy or weak or indecisive or damaged. I was trapped in a system designed to feel like love, but function like a cage. Designed to feel like passion, but function like prison. Designed to feel like home, but function like hell. Tomorrow, I'll tell you about the moment he made romance feel like threat, how the first red flags looked exactly like love, how the intensity I mistook for passion was actually the beginning of control, how the things that made me fall were the same things that trapped me, how every romantic gesture was also a test, how every gift came with strings, how every compliment contained criticism. That's when you understand the whole thing was designed from the beginning. That every good day was always leading to a bad day. That the trap was built into the foundation before you even walked into the building. You were never safe. You just didn't know it yet.